I always believed that after 32 years of marriage, there was nothing left for me to discover. No new secrets, no new surprises, no hidden corners in the man I shared my life with. But life has its own way of humbling you. Some truths arrive quietly, some arrive gently, and some arrive the way mine did, unexpected, heavy, and wrapped inside an old coat that had been hanging in the back of our closet for almost a decade. My name is Evelyn, and this is the story of the day I learned that the person sleeping beside me had been carrying a piece of his life that I never knew existed, not because he wished to deceive me, but because sometimes the deepest pain sits in silence, waiting for the right moment to speak. I remember that morning well. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear every breath you take. Rain was tapping gently on the window, like fingers trying to get my attention. My husband, Charles, was downstairs fixing himself some coffee. He always drank it before the sun was fully awake. I decided to use that little bit of alone time to clean out our bedroom closet. I had been meaning to do it for months, but you know how things go. Life gets busy, and old things stay where they are. As I pulled clothes from the rack, folded winter sweaters, and wiped down dusty hangers, my hand brushed against something heavy, something I almost forgot existed. Charles's old wool coat, dark brown, a little worn on the cuffs, a coat he used to wear everywhere, to church, to the grocery store, on evening walks. And then one day, he stopped wearing it, just like that. I lifted it from the hanger, planning to donate it, but the moment I held it, I felt something inside the pocket, something thick, something folded many times over. At first, I thought it was an old receipt or maybe one of those grocery lists he always scribbled on scrap paper. But when I reached inside, my fingers touched paper, soft, a little wrinkled, tied with a faded ribbon, a small stack of letters. I didn't open them right away. I just stared. My heart began to beat slow and heavy, like footsteps in an empty hallway. I whispered to myself, Lord, what is this? And in that moment, I had no idea that what I held in my hands would open a door to a part of my husband's life I never knew existed, a part that would change the way I saw him and myself forever. I sat there with that old coat in my hands, feeling its weight in a way I had never felt before. It was strange how something you walked past for years could suddenly feel like a doorway, like a breath being held for too long. But before I opened those letters, before I even let myself imagine what they might say, I felt something inside me whisper, Evelyn, breathe first. Go slow. So I placed the coat gently on the bed. I sat beside it, letting the rain outside fill the silence with its own story. And in those quiet moments, my mind drifted back to the beginning, back to the man I married, back to the life we built. Because sometimes, before you understand a secret, you have to understand the person who held it. My husband, Charles, was not a loud man, not someone who filled a room with his voice or made big gestures that demanded attention. No. He was soft-spoken, steady, the kind of man who believed real strength was quiet and patient. He had deep brown eyes that always looked like they were thinking about something far away, something he never fully shared. And when he smiled, truly smiled, his whole face softened, like a man who wanted peace more than anything in the world. We met in a grocery store when I was 23. I was comparing two brands of canned soup, thinking I was making some big life decision. He walked up beside me and said, in the gentlest voice, "Ma'am, if you're still deciding, try the one with the red label. My mama used to swear by it." I looked at him, surprised by the kindness in his tone. He wasn't trying to flirt. He wasn't trying to impress me. He was just being helpful, warm. And I remember thinking, this man, he has a good heart. Turned out he did. He worked as an electrician for most of his life, hands rough from years of wires and tools, shoulders strong from climbing ladders and lifting equipment. But his spirit? His spirit was gentle. He never rushed anyone, never raised his voice, never tried to be more than who he was. We married 2 years after that first meeting. A small wedding in a little church with pale yellow walls and choir voices that rose like a soft blanket of hope. Nothing fancy, just real, just honest. That was us. The early years of our marriage were simple. We lived in a small rented apartment with floors that creaked and a kitchen with only one drawer that worked properly. But it didn't matter. We laughed. We learned each other's habits. We grew up together. Charles loved watching old Western shows. Every evening, he'd sit with one foot tucked under the other, humming softly at the theme songs. I used to tease him for knowing every character's name, and he'd grin like a little boy. He kept his clothes neat, always folding them the same way. Corners tucked, sleeves smooth, everything lined up like soldiers ready for inspection. He never drank much, never stayed out late. He loved home, loved routine, loved calm. And I loved him for that. But over the years, life got heavier. Not bad, just heavier. Bills, responsibility, aging parents, work stress, all the things that come with growing older. Charles became a bit quieter through the years. Sometimes I'd find him sitting on the porch alone, staring at the sky as if it held something only he could see. I'd ask, "You okay? Baby?" He'd nod and say, "Just thinking, Eve, just thinking." He never said about what, and I never pushed him. Because when you love someone that long, you think you can read them without words. You think silence means peace. You think routine means comfort. But sometimes, silence is something else. Sometimes it's a story waiting for the right moment. That brown wool coat, the one lying on my bed, had been with him for years. He wore it every winter. He wore it to funerals, to weddings, to church, and even on nights when he just wanted some fresh air. I used to tell him, "Charles, that coat getting old. Let me buy you a new one." And he would smile that soft smile of his and say, "Me and this coat, we've been through a lot. It's still good." But one winter, about 8 or 9 years ago, he suddenly stopped wearing it. Just like that. No explanation. No moment that stood out. He folded it neatly and placed it in the back of the closet, like a book he wasn't ready to read again. I didn't think much of it. Life was busy. We had our routines. You overlook things when you believe nothing is out of place. I never imagined that coat held something inside it, something tucked deep in its pocket, with a ribbon wrapped around it like a secret waiting patiently. Our house wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen, and a living room big enough for a couch, a coffee table, and memories scattered in every corner. The walls held framed photos of family gatherings, graduations, Sunday dinners, and moments that felt important at the time. The kind of moments you think will last forever. We didn't have children. Not because we didn't want to, but because life gave us a different path. We tried for years, came close once, and then it didn't happen. We grieved quietly, Together. Then we moved forward, holding on to each other instead of what we wished for. Charles always used to say, "Eve, we're enough. Me and you, that's enough." And it was. Or at least I believed it was. Looking back, there were small things, tiny moments, that I brushed off, like the way Charles would hold old photographs a little too long, especially the ones of him as a young man, standing beside a girl with bright eyes and a shy smile. He never said who she was, and I never asked. Or the nights he stayed downstairs long after I'd gone to bed, sitting alone, hands folded, eyes distant. Or how sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, he'd take that brown coat from the closet, touch the pocket as if checking something, and then put it back. I didn't understand any of it back then. Love makes you trust without questioning. It makes you assume everything is fine as long as there's no loud thunder. But sometimes the quietest storms are the strongest ones. As I sat beside that old coat, with those letters tucked inside its pocket, I felt something shift in my heart. A feeling I can't fully explain, like standing at the edge of a memory you didn't know existed. I brushed my fingers over the ribbon tied around the letters. It was faded, almost grey, soft from age, gently frayed at the ends. I held my breath without realizing it. Because somewhere deep inside, I knew whatever was waiting inside those letters was not going to be small. Charles called up from downstairs. "Eve, you need help with something?" I froze, stared at the coat, stared at the letters. I didn't answer. Not because I was hiding something, but because I didn't yet know what I had found. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. I walked slowly to the window, listening to the rain. The house felt different, like it had something to say, like it had been holding its breath for years. I thought about Charles downstairs, sipping his coffee, unaware that the past he tucked away was now sitting upstairs in my hands. I whispered softly, "Lord, give me strength. Whatever this is, let me face it with grace." Then I turned back to the bed, sat down, and placed my hand on the letters again. Not to open them, not yet, but to prepare myself, because deep in my spirit, I felt it. I sat there staring at the letters for what felt like forever. The rain outside had grown heavier, tapping against the windows like a soft warning. I could hear Charles moving around downstairs, humming softly, completely unaware of what I had in my hands. I took a deep breath and untied the faded ribbon, trying to steady my shaking fingers. The first letter slid out slowly. Cream-coloured paper, edges soft from years of handling. I unfolded it and held it close, as if the words inside could escape if I let it go. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. A neat, flowing script. Not like Charles's usual hurried scrawl. I read the opening line. "My dearest Charles, I hope you know how much I needed you yesterday. I don't have anyone else I can trust like I trust you." My heart froze. I swallowed hard, trying to make sense of the words. I knew Charles well. I knew every habit, every quirk, every small way he showed love. But these words, they felt like someone else entirely. I picked up the second letter, and the third. Each one spoke of meetings, conversations, moments shared in quiet rooms or on walks in the evening, moments I had never known about. A cold, heavy knot formed in my stomach. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I whispered to myself, "Charles, who is she?" I didn't want to believe it. I tried to tell myself these were old letters, maybe from a friend, someone he had helped long ago. But deep down, I knew. I was already suspecting something I didn't want to imagine. I remembered the nights when Charles would come home late, claiming he had errands. The mornings he left early, saying he wanted to get to work before the sun. The little smiles he sometimes gave when I asked him what he was thinking. I never questioned it before. I trusted him completely. But now, with these letters in my hands, all the little things I had overlooked were shouting at me. I tried to calm myself. I told myself, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just friendship. Maybe he's helping someone who needs it. But my heart wouldn't let me believe that. The letters spoke of closeness, of emotions, of dependency, of something intimate. I felt my hands tremble. I dropped the letters onto the bed and ran my fingers through my hair. I needed air. I needed to think. I walked to the window and stared at the rain. It blurred the world outside. Cars passed slowly through the streets, their lights reflecting on wet pavement. I felt the weight of every year I had spent with Charles pressing down on me, every moment of trust, every laugh, every shared meal. All of it seemed fragile, like it could shatter at any second. I thought about our life together, the quiet evenings, the Sunday mornings, the small routines we had built. Was it all a lie? Was everything I believed about him false? I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. I whispered a prayer, hoping for clarity. Lord, show me the truth. Whatever it is, give me strength. But the truth, it was already there, waiting. For the next hour, I sat on the edge of the bed, torn between opening the letters completely and putting them back. Part of me wanted to run downstairs, demand answers, shake Charles, and make him tell me everything. But another part of me, a quieter part, told me to wait. Evelyn, I whispered to myself, you need to understand before you accuse. You need to see the whole picture. So I stayed, letter after letter, page after page. Some spoke of support, some of sorrow, some of gratitude. And slowly, a pattern began to emerge. The letters weren't romantic. They weren't flirtatious in the way I had feared. They were sad, painful, heavy with grief, and they were addressed to someone named Lydia. I froze. I had never heard Charles speak of a Lydia. Not once. Not a passing mention. I felt my chest tighten. My mind raced. Who was she? And why did these letters seem so intimate? I began to notice little details. Charles had a photograph in his wallet, tucked away, that I had never paid attention to. It was of a young woman with bright eyes and a gentle smile. I had assumed she was a friend, or perhaps a distant relative, but the letters, they painted a different story. They spoke of shared pain, of loss, of moments when the writer had nowhere else to turn except Charles. And Charles had been there, always there. I didn't know if it was loyalty, guilt, or love, but I knew one thing. It had been important, so important that he kept every letter hidden in that coat for all these years. Later that evening, Charles came upstairs to check on me. I was still sitting on the bed, the letters spread around me like fragile fragments of someone else's life. He paused in the doorway and asked softly, "Eve, you okay?" I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My throat was tight, my mind spinning. Finally, I whispered, "Charles, who is Lydia?" He froze. His hands trembled slightly. His calm demeanor faltered for the first time in years. He opened his mouth, and then closed it again. I saw it then. The shadow in his eyes. The quiet sorrow he had carried, hidden from me all these years. He took a deep breath and said, "Evelyn. She was my sister." I blinked. The letters, the closeness. all of it. My mind tried to reconcile the words with the truth. Your sister? I whispered. I I never knew you had a sister. He nodded slowly. Yes, I lost her a long time ago. These letters, they were the last pieces of her. The only way I could hold on to her when she was gone. I sank onto the bed, letting the weight of his words settle over me. A mix of relief and guilt washed through me. I had been ready to believe the worst. I had been ready to feel betrayed. Instead, I felt sorrow for him, for her, for all the pain he had carried alone. I realized that I had been living with a man who never asked for sympathy, who never complained, who never let his burden touch mine. A man who had hidden grief so deep, I had thought silence meant nothing. Now I understood. Silence had been everything. Even with the truth beginning to reveal itself, I couldn't shake the feeling of disorientation. Years of assumptions, years of trust, felt both fragile and precious. I wanted to ask questions. So many questions. Why hadn't he told me? Why had he suffered alone? Why did he hide this for so long? But I also understood. He had carried this for me, so that I wouldn't have to bear the weight of his sorrow. And that was love. But love is complicated. Sometimes it hides in shadows. Sometimes it is quiet, unseen, and heavy. I didn't yet know how to reconcile the pain, the love, and the truth. All I knew was that life had changed in a single afternoon. And nothing, not our home, not our routines, not the warmth of the coffee he brewed every morning, would ever feel exactly the same again. I remember that moment clearly. Charles sitting across from me on the edge of the bed, the rain still tapping against the window, the letters lying between us like fragile glass. I could see the weight of every year pressing on him, the sorrow, the guilt, the love he had carried silently. He looked at me, his eyes soft but heavy, and said, Eve, I never wanted you to see this, not like this. I reached out and took his hand. It was rough from work, but warm, familiar, and for the first time, I felt the enormity of the secret he had carried all these years. Charles, tell me, I whispered. Tell me everything. And so he did. Lydia had been his younger sister by 5 years. Bright, spirited, but fragile in ways he had tried to protect. He spoke softly, carefully, like saying the words aloud might break something delicate. She struggled. From the beginning, he said. Depression, anxiety, feeling like the world would never understand her. I tried to help. I tried to hold her when the world wouldn't. I listened, every word sinking into me. I thought I had loved Charles deeply. I thought I knew his heart. But this was a depth I had never touched. He told me how he would visit her when she felt alone, how he would sit with her in quiet rooms, hold her hand, listen to her cry, comfort her when she felt like giving up, and how, slowly, he had become the only safe place in her life. These letters, he said, they were her way of keeping me close, of letting me know she was still here, even when she couldn't be. I picked up one of the letters and read a line aloud, my voice trembling. I don't know how to face the world, Charles, but knowing you care makes it easier to breathe. I swallowed hard. This wasn't about betrayal. It wasn't about love in the way I had feared. It was about pain, and the silent, desperate ways people reach for the ones who hold them steady. He paused, rubbing his forehead. I failed her, he said quietly. I wasn't enough. I couldn't keep her safe. I felt a tear slip down my cheek. I had never seen him like this. Vulnerable, broken, human. Charles went on. He told me about the day Lydia died, how he had been there, holding her, trying to give her comfort, trying to tell her she was loved. How he had carried that grief alone for years, never letting it touch me, never letting me see the tears that had soaked his pillow at night. And as he spoke, I realized something profound. This wasn't a secret he kept from me out of deceit. He had kept it because he loved me, because he didn't want my life to be burdened by the sorrow of another. I reached for his hand again, holding it tightly. "I understand now, Charles," I whispered. "I see why you kept this to yourself." He shook his head, tears rolling freely down his cheeks. "No, Eve, you don't understand. You can't understand. She was my sister, my responsibility, and I let her go." I wanted to comfort him, to tell him it wasn't his fault. But words felt useless against the enormity of his pain. All I could do was sit there, letting him cry, letting him release the grief he had been carrying alone for so long. After hours of talking, of reading the letters together, of understanding the moments he had shared with Lydia, something shifted in both of us. I realized that love is not just about happiness. It's about shared pain. It's about understanding the burdens someone carries that you cannot see. It's about holding space for someone's sorrow and grief, even when it is not yours to bear. Charles looked at me, exhausted, his shoulders slumped. "I've been hiding for so long, Eve," he said. "I didn't want to burden you. I wanted to protect you. But I think I protected myself too." I squeezed his hand. "It's not your burden to bear alone anymore," I whispered. "You don't have to hide from me. We're in this life together, always." And in that moment, the storm inside me began to settle. Not because the grief was gone, not because the sorrow had disappeared, but because the truth had been shared. I could finally see him. The real Charles. Not just the husband I knew, but the man who had carried pain silently, who had loved deeply, who had lived with a sorrow I never knew existed. We went through every letter, every note of gratitude, every line of sorrow, every quiet plea for comfort. And the pattern became clear. Lydia had trusted Charles with everything she had left, and he had given it to her. Every visit, every moment, every word had been his way of keeping her alive in spirit, even when she was slipping away. "This was not romantic, Eve," he said gently. "This was family. This was love. This was grief. This was responsibility." I nodded, tears blurring my vision. It was not betrayal. It was love, the kind that is hard, painful, quiet, and unseen, the kind that shapes people without anyone knowing. After hours of conversation, we sat together in silence. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, pattering softly on the roof. I held Charles's hand and felt the warmth of him, the solidity of him, the life we had built together. I thought about the years of assumptions I had made, the small misunderstandings, the times I had wondered what he was thinking, what he was hiding. And now I knew. He had been hiding grief, pain, loss, a love that could not be spoken, and I had been blind to it. Not because I didn't care, but because sometimes the quietest suffering is invisible. Sometimes the deepest stories are tucked away in a pocket, in a coat, in a ribbon-wrapped bundle of letters, waiting for the right person to understand. I took a deep breath and whispered, "Charles, I am sorry." I didn't see your pain. I didn't see Lydia's pain. He shook his head, tears still rolling. Eve, it's not your fault. I wanted you to have peace. I wanted us to have peace. That's why I hid it. That's why I carried it alone. I realized then that love is not always about sharing everything openly. Sometimes it's about holding someone's heart gently, carrying it carefully, and knowing when the time is right to let them see it. And the time had come. After that day, everything felt different in our home. Not in a way that was sadder, but in a way that was deeper, richer, more real. Charles and I sat together that evening, the letters spread across the bed between us like small fragments of a hidden life finally revealed. For hours, we spoke softly, reading a few letters aloud, stopping to cry, stopping to breathe, stopping to simply exist in the quiet of our shared understanding. I felt the weight of years lifted, not entirely, of course. Loss does not disappear, but carrying it alone is the heaviest burden of all. And now, at last, we were carrying it together. We spoke about Lydia for the first time in words rather than whispers in the dark. She was everything to me, Charles said, his voice breaking. And I failed her in ways I can't fix. I reached for his hand, holding it tightly. You didn't fail her, Charles. You loved her with all you had. You were her safe place, her anchor. That's more than most can give. He looked at me then, eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and relief. I wish I could have told you sooner. I wanted to, but I didn't know how. I was scared, Eve. Scared that you'd see me differently. I shook my head gently. Charles, I see you now. The real you. And I love you even more for it. Not in spite of your grief. Because of it. And in that moment, something shifted. The letters, the coat, the years of silence. They became a bridge between the past and the present, between sorrow and love, between hidden pain and shared understanding. Over the next few days, I began noticing the small gestures I had always loved about Charles, but now with a new depth of understanding. The way he hummed while he worked, the way he carefully folded clothes, the way he poured a cup of coffee and sat in quiet reflection. I realized that these habits, which had once seemed ordinary, were also his way of coping, his way of carrying the memory of his sister without letting it crush him. And now that I knew, I could participate in that memory. I could honor it with him. One evening, I found myself brushing the coat gently, folding the letters neatly, placing them in a box with care. I whispered softly, "Thank you, Lydia, for letting him love you. And thank you, Charles, for carrying her memory all these years." Charles watched me quietly, then smiled faintly. "I think she would have liked you," he said softly. And I believed him. It took time, days, weeks, but the anger and confusion I had felt at first slowly faded. Not because the letters were harmless, they were heavy, filled with grief, but because the intention behind them was clear. Charles had not betrayed me. He had protected me. He had carried pain alone because he loved me. I forgave him silently. I forgave myself for thinking the worst. And in that forgiveness, I found a deeper love than I had ever known. We began to talk openly about our feelings, our fears, our losses. The house, once filled with quiet routines and unspoken words, became a place where sorrow could be spoken aloud and understood. Sometimes we would sit together, holding hands, reading a letter aloud, and sharing a memory of Lydia. Sometimes we would simply sit in silence, feeling the weight of the past and the lightness of being together in the present. One rainy afternoon, I asked Charles, "Do you think you've healed a little?" He nodded slowly. "I think I'm learning to carry it differently now, not alone, with you." And I realized that this was the gift hidden in those letters. Not sorrow, not pain, not the coat, but connection. The ability to hold grief together and find love in the cracks. We began small rituals to remember her. A candle lit on rainy days, a photograph placed carefully on the mantel, a quiet conversation at bedtime. Not because we wanted to live in the past, but because acknowledging it allowed us to live fully in the present. I felt our bond grow stronger with each passing day. A bond tempered by sorrow, shaped by understanding, and deepened by love. I started noticing things about Charles I had never seen before. The way his hands trembled slightly when he touched the letters. The way he paused at certain memories, a faraway look in his eyes. The way he smiled at me afterward, quietly, as if to say, "Thank you for seeing me." And I did see him, every part of him. The man who had loved, the man who had grieved, the man who had carried a secret for decades. I saw the depth of his heart, the quiet strength that had always been there, waiting for me to notice. And I loved him even more, not in spite of the past, but because of it. Life continued, slowly, gently. The rain fell, the coffee brewed, the routines carried on. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. Every small gesture was meaningful. Every word spoken softly carried weight. Every shared moment was precious. I realized that the miracle wasn't in discovering the letters. It was in understanding them, in understanding Charles, in allowing both sorrow and love to exist together. And slowly, we healed. Not perfectly, not without moments of sadness, but with honesty, with patience, with shared grief, and with an unwavering commitment to each other. We began to see our home differently, no longer just a place for routines, chores, and habits, but a place where memory and love could coexist, where the past could be honored without controlling the present. Charles started wearing the coat again on chilly mornings, not because it was necessary, but because it reminded us both that the past had shaped who we were, and that love could still thrive amidst the shadows of sorrow. We often sit together, reading a letter aloud, and sometimes we laugh softly at memories of Lydia's bright smile or a story Charles told about her childhood. And sometimes we cry, but always together. And in that togetherness, I learned the deepest lesson of all. Love is not just in the happy moments. It is in carrying each other's burdens. It is in holding hands through grief. It is in seeing, truly seeing, the heart of the person you love. The days that followed were quieter, gentler. The storm had passed, but its echoes remained, soft, distant, like the last drops of rain clinging to leaves after a downpour. Charles and I moved slowly through our routines, now carrying a deeper understanding of each other and of the life we had shared. I found myself looking at him differently, not with suspicion, not with doubt, but with awe. Awe for the man who had loved silently, grieved quietly, and protected the hearts of those he cared about, even when it meant carrying the heaviest burdens alone. We began talking more, truly talking, about the past, about sorrow, about loss, and most importantly, about the small, beautiful moments of life we often took for granted. I realized something profound. Love is not always about joy or ease. It is also about endurance, about patience, about holding someone's heart gently, even when it is broken. It is about understanding that grief does not weaken love. It can deepen it, if faced together. I learned that silence is not always empty. Sometimes silence holds stories too heavy to speak. Sometimes it protects the ones we love from burdens we cannot share. And sometimes silence is a sign of devotion, not deceit. I often sit by the window now, watching the rain fall, thinking of Lydia, thinking of Charles, thinking of us. I hold his hand and feel the warmth of our years together, the strength of our bond, and the depth of our shared grief. We keep the letters carefully in a box, a reminder of what we endured and what we survived. And when I look at them, I don't feel fear or anger anymore. I feel reverence for the past, for him, for the love that carried us through darkness. And I think to myself, life is full of hidden corners. We may never know every secret, every sorrow, every silent struggle. But if we hold love, patience, and understanding close to our hearts, we can weather anything. Charles and I sit together each evening, sometimes in silence, sometimes reading a letter aloud. And though the sorrow never fully disappears, it no longer weighs us down. It has become part of the tapestry of our lives, woven into the fabric of our shared story. I have learned to appreciate the quiet moments, the soft coffee in the morning, the rain tapping against the window, the steady, unwavering presence of a man who loves deeply, even in silence. And I have learned that the heart can hold both grief and love at the same time. They are not opposites. They are companions. They are the proof that life is complex, that people are resilient, and that love, true love, endures everything. So, if you ever find something hidden, something unexpected in the life of someone you love, pause, breathe, and seek to understand before judging, because sometimes what seems like a secret is actually a testament to love. Sometimes what feels like a betrayal is actually a quiet act of devotion. And sometimes, just sometimes, a small ribbon, a coat, and a stack of old letters can change everything, not by breaking you, but by showing you the depth of the human heart and the strength of the love it can carry. I hold Charles's hand now, gently, with gratitude and understanding. And I know this for certain. Love is patient, love is kind, and love endures. Thank you for watching. Your time and support truly mean a lot. If you enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and allows me to bring you even better videos. Stay inspired, stay focused, and I'll see you in the next video.
Thank you for watching. Your time and support truly mean a lot. If you enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and allows me to bring you even better videos. Stay inspired, stay focused, and I'll see you in the next video.